on, everybody? You're watching The Sit Down. I'm DJ Sixsmith. We got some great guests in the building. Tricia Clarke-Stone, Antoinette Clarke. Guys, how are you?
Good.
Very nice to meet you.
You too. Thanks
Congratulations
for having
on
us.
the book.
Thank you.
Of course. So you guys have a really interesting story, and I feel like this is a really great time for this book as well. So just give me kind of the inside scoop, how this all came together, and how cool has it been kind of talking to people about it and having people read your stuff?
Yeah, so I think it came
She
together.
always does that.
Does this happen all the time?
Right?
All the time.
So it came together because we were looked at as anomalies. People were like, you're an entrepreneur, you started a company, you got Russell Simmons to give you seed capital, now you've sold it. Antoinette, she's won 2 Emmys, she's a senior vice president at CBS, so everyone would be like, your mom must be so proud of what the two of you guys have accomplished.
And we started thinking, like, well, why?
Why are
People
we-
who look like us and women should be the norm.
Right.
So we decided to come together to write Double Down, and throughout the process, we were like, what's the common denominator that elevated both of us to our level of success? And we figured out that it was doubling down. We've been doubling down since we were kids. So we've been using that muscle so much that it's become second nature. We started when we were in high school, when we decided to, buy Guess sweatshirts and sell them to our school friends.
That's a really resourceful, by the way. That's
Yeah.
a great story.
No, but I think net, it's about trying to democratize success for people that look like us. And we think Double Down at least starts that process.
Right.
And you guys are honest about it too, because you realize as women, as black women especially, like
Yeah.
the odds are against you guys. And you guys
1000%.
didn't let that stop you, whether it was being a production assistant or working through the marketing branding world. What were the biggest challenges you guys faced? Start with you, Anthony.
So I would say I was probably always the only black producer in the room. When I worked for the Tyra Banks show, that was the first show where I was one of 3 or sometimes 4, because Tyra was very focused on having women of color, people of color on her staff. So I think that was great. And then when I switched over to the corporate side, it was such a switch for me. I was used to being on productions and TV shows and being more creative, and then having to learn the ins and outs and the politics of being on the more corporate side. And I felt like I had to relearn and retrain myself on what was okay, and the status quo kept punching me in the face. And I was like, well, wait a minute, I've come this far. I can't surmise to the status quo. I need to push forward and keep doing that. So I was like, I need to double down. And for us, double down is you survey the landscape and you see where there's an opening and you have a calculable advantage and you go all in. And when you go all in and double down on yourselves, you're always gonna win.
And I think too, there's a multiplier effect, right? When you double down, because if you're doing it, other people see that and they start believing in you and they know that you're gonna deliver.
Right.
So, but for me, I experienced a ton of ageism because when I started out early, I started out working at Hot 97, Kiss FM, and CD 101.9, and we love music. And growing up, it's like our mom was like, she would be considered today a walking Spotify playlist. So we knew everything. So the opportunity to kind of work at one of the top hip hop stations.
No question.
And I grew up on Kiss FM, so I started there in sales and marketing, and quickly built my portfolio of business, so I got a phone book and a Metro card. Back then, it might have even been tokens.
Yeah, right,
And
absolutely.
I hit
You're
the road.
aging yourself.
Yeah, I hit the road and tried to close deals. And I quickly closed upwards of $1 million in new business. And I remember going to my manager saying, okay, here's what I've done. I'd like to now get
Look at Sis looking
I'll
out.
continue.
Here's what I've done. I'd now like to get more exposure with higher level clients and agencies. And they were like, nope, you have to wait your turn. You have to pay your dues. There's a roadmap that you have to follow in order to get there. And that was a point that was a huge wake up call for me, because I was like, wait, if I'm impacting and I'm delivering, why do I have to wait?
Right.
And that was the status quo, all like beating me up, like a punching bag. And that's when I think I got to the point where I was like, we have to challenge the status quo, because the status quo sets up these ideals and a way that you should have success and what the journey should be. And we're big believers in you define what that
your
is.
success is.
And obviously there are a few things you have to do to ensure that you get there, because challenging the status quo is hard.
Yeah, and having the confidence to do so too,
Exactly.
because it's so comfortable to just stay in the status quo, right? For the
but
people
then change won't happen.
Yeah.
You won't shift culture. If everything stays the same, where are we at?
Right.
Yeah, if everything stays the same, we wouldn't have Uber, Airbnb. Like, look at.
We wouldn't have Amazon.
Exactly.
Like, hello.
And when those people first brought up those ideas, they're like, wait, what? You want to do this,
Exactly.
you want to do that? But
Right.
it's going to take those people to break through, because otherwise
Absolutely.
things just continue to go on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you guys have plenty of stories with that. But I think one of the big things also is just gaining that confidence, because you guys are doubling down, you're focusing on what your skills are, focusing on the white space as well. When did you guys gain the confidence to be like, you know what, screw this, I'm just going to break through the way I want to?
Well, I think it all started with our family. We were raised by strong, strong women. They were our role models. Our mom was a single mom, and she was the youngest of 8. And we like to say we were raised by committee, because everyone helped
whole
raise
crew,
us.
yeah, yeah.
Our grandmother, our aunts. And to us, our mom was this mix of the alpha female who was also sensitive and feminine and could rock a great outfit, but also could command respect in any room she walked in. So we were
called her Audacity in Heels.
Yeah, like that
wow,
was her
I
name.
like it.
And then we also thought of her as a Swiss Army knife. A Swiss Army knife has all these tools that they pull out to figure out and find solutions for everything. We would never see her sweat. She would always figure out everything, and we were gaining confidence by seeing that in real life. And then our Aunt Monica was the first boss lady that was so close to us, and we were like, wow, we were in awe of her. She was not only an entrepreneur, but she ran our construction company.
Wow.
For an immigrant to come to the States from Jamaica and create a construction company was unheard of at that time.
No, it's incredible.
So
Yeah, and I think they believed in the possibility of everything. So that really fueled our belief system. And I think when you look at the fact that they were immigrants, they came here, they were really in search of giving us a level of opportunity. And their drive and desire for us to be successful is unmatched. I can't even explain how focused they were on that. So they really leaned, though, into the status quo.
Yeah.
And I think because they thought, okay, the American dream is you're either a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer. That was the pinnacle
Right,
of
that's it.
success to them, and that's it. And we were like, hold on.
we don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer.
What if we want to do something a little different?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we knew we didn't want to follow the path that they were trying to kind of set out for us. So essentially, after we graduated college, we tricked them. And we said, okay, let us work for 2 years, gain experience. It will look great on our grad school application. So we'll go back to school 2 years after graduating from college and working. And they were like, okay, deal. So Antoinette and I looked at each other and said, we have 2 years to figure this thing out. What do we want to do? What does that roadmap look like? And how are we going to really reach the level of success that we would be proud of, but then also.
And it would get them off our backs.
Yeah.
I think you guys have really interesting stories, because you both have done a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
And you have some of these people that are just on one track, they're doing something for 10, 15 years, and that's the way that they're going. How has it impacted you guys that you've done all these different types of things, especially now in your career, where you've elevated yourselves and advanced? How has that helped out?
Well, I think it's definitely helped me diversify who I am as a person, not just in the professional space, but in the personal space, because I'm faced with all of these different situations and in these different scenarios where I have to use different muscles that I would never have to use when I was a producer, now that I'm on more of the business side. And it's given me so much more confidence to walk into any type of room, because I've been a producer and on the production side for 12 years.
You've been on the ground, yeah.
Yeah, and I've worked my way up. I think a lot of people, especially millennials and a lot of younger people, see the Facebooks, and you're $1 million away from the next IPO,
Right.
and you're going to be the next CEO of this company. And we're big believers in you have to work your way up. Even now at my level, I'm not beneath picking up my own phone, sending a fax, but that would sound crazy. But going to the copy machine,
Right, doing your own stuff.
anything.
Yeah.
It's all about the hustle. And once you work your way up, you learn from the bottom up. And if you can do everything from A to Z, then you can inspire so many people under you to do the same, and you're building that confidence in them. And that's what we're all about too. We want to inspire the next generation of boss ladies to be able to elevate and find success on their terms. It doesn't mean the success your mom thinks you should have, the success Joey down the block has, is the success that you want for yourself. And anyone could be a boss lady. People need to also understand being a boss lady doesn't mean you have to be a CEO or an entrepreneur. Any of us can activate becoming a boss lady by setting our own terms and our own rules, especially if we stay true to ourselves.
Yeah, and there's something about having humility and strength together. You know, just to be honest with yourself, like, I need to be able to do all these things, but also, I'm going to go out there and get this.
Exactly.
You know? And I think that's certainly something that we could have a little more of in our society.
Yeah, and I think that's, too, how we almost define a boss lady.
Yeah.
It's having equal parts IQ and EQ, which I think we don't see enough. And also, it's about being a fearless optimist. So knowing that you're going to go in, you have that drive, your focus, and I'll tell you one thing, you should never bet against a boss lady because she will deliver.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're hoping to inspire in Double Down.
So you guys are in this really cool spot where you get to inspire people with your book. You mentioned your family. Who are other people along the way that have inspired you both?
So actually, a few people that have inspired us, we interviewed for the book. And the reason why we did that was because we wanted to show that there are different paths to success. And the 8 core principles that we have in Double Down, it can be used and wielded in many, many different ways. So one person that we're extremely inspired by is Aisha Curry. She's also a good friend, but she has really been able to take something she's super passionate about, which is cooking, and turn that into a formidable career for herself.
It's like she's building an empire for herself.
And not being defined by being Steph Curry's husband,
Exactly.
which is such a huge thing.
We applaud.
Yeah.
And then some.
Because you don't see that often.
No.
She could have quite possibly have been completely complacent just being Steph Curry's wife and been fine with it. But she's a boss lady, and boss ladies don't do that. Also, Anne Wojcicki.
Yeah, Anne Wojcicki, the co-founder of 23andMe. Tricia's big in tech, and we both love innovation. And I worked with Anne's company on a couple of integrations at CBS, and we were so inspired by her story. And her sister also is hugely successful. So that sister bond and that energy, and for women also to see a woman in tech and how far you can go, because usually when you think of tech, you think of men. So we really wanted to put that forth as well. And then we also have Carly Kushney in the book, who is an African-American designer. And we really wanted to put that forth for the world to see that, wow, there are so many paths you can take, whether it's fashion, tech, or media, and you can find success if you use our 8 principles and you really double down on yourself.
No question. So I'm sure a lot of people will come up to you guys, ask for advice. When you think about yourselves first starting out, what was the advice that you really needed to hear that you weren't hearing at that time?
I wish someone would have said, everyone obviously always wants to be successful, but to be successful, it's about strength. And that strength has to come from within you. I think when you're first starting out, it's like, how can I get this job? Then how can
you're
this
projecting
person
forward
hook
the
me
next
up?
5 years, yeah.
But it has to come from yourself. So I think the first thing is, how do you identify what your superpowers are? So sometimes it takes people years to figure out what that is. And ideally, we look at that as, what are you really good at? What do you feel magical doing? And what have you built a reputation for?
Like when people are looking for help and advice, what are they coming to you for all the time? What's that common denominator?
So then you kind of identify what you really do well. Then the next step after that is, then you identify your white space. And how do you really then take those superpowers and activate in uncharted territory where
To
you
create
think
something great and new.
Yeah, where you think there's an opportunity. And then finally, playing the long game. We can be so distracted by failures and even small wins and saying, okay, and become complacent with kind of where you are, and also the need for instant gratification in the world that we live in today.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah, it's crazy. So for us, it's, you gotta know what the future prize is and the North Star, and then really double down on that.
Yeah, and it's okay to fail in the moment too. You know, I think for the millennial generation.
And failure teaches you, and you get right back up. So you don't bring yesterday into today, because you keep moving forward.
Yeah, we're big believers in everyone's gonna fail. I fail daily sometimes, but it all comes down to how you recover.
Exactly.
And I also like what you guys said in the book about writing stuff down too, because like it's great, right?
She takes it to another level.
So I always say, don't rely on wishful thinking, rely on listful thinking. And I write everything down from my to-do list to my goals. And I think that's what really helped me stay on track when I was trying to become a producer. I wrote down exactly what I wanted to do, and I held myself accountable. So I never left my eye off of that prize. So whether I was working long weekends or late nights or even on a canceled show and having to reinvent myself and try to get on a new show, I knew I was not going to give up until I won that Emmy.
And you did.
Yes.
You won two.
Two. Exactly.
So I was like, give me one.
Spread the love, right?
Yeah.
Well, guys, it's been a pleasure.
You
Tricia,
too.
thanks so much. Antoinette, thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
September 10th, the big day?
Yes.
Awesome.
Double
Can't wait.
down.